During one gloomy day, inside what looked like an abandoned hospital deep in the woods, a boy named Ryzen Tosaka was seen going through a stack of old medical records. The moment he understood what he was reading, his face twisted in shock. Unable to accept it, he threw the file against the wall. Overwhelmed by the weight of his emotions, Ryzen slowly began to break down. Suddenly, he froze. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing closer with every second. A deep sense of fear crawled up his spine. Unnatural events had been surrounding him for a long time now, and at this very moment, he knew he was being hunted by the monster he had been running from. As the door creaked open, Ryzen had already accepted his fate. He didn't even try to fight back. A dark, floating entity drifted toward him. Its face was blurred, but it clearly had the shape of a long-haired girl. With a defeated expression, Ryzen weakly asked the creature to take it easy on him, believing it would make him happy if she did. But the creature showed no mercy. Without hesitation, she tore into his flesh using her long, sharp fangs. In an instant, her form twisted and morphed into something far worse, a horrifying, spider-like creature. At that point, Ryzen knew there was no escape. This monster, however, was not unfamiliar to him. In fact, he clearly remembered the first time he encountered it. If his memory served him right, it all began during the summer of his first year in the village, after he left his hometown. One sunny morning in his dorm, Ryzen was suddenly awakened by the loud noise of his air conditioner. He tried to fix it, only to realize it was clogged by a massive spider living inside. Since it was still early, he decided to freshen up and prepare for school first. While getting ready, his thoughts drifted back to the spider. Given its size, he knew it couldn't have come from the air conditioner. Still, with school on his mind and no time to deal with it, he pushed the thought aside. As he turned on the news to catch updates about the recent disappearance of Professor Seigo Kusuninoi from Uio University, he noticed something strange. The side of his bed was now completely covered in spider webs. That didn't make any sense. He was sure they weren't there the night before. The idea that such a massive spider could create all of this in just a few hours while he slept was both fascinating and terrifying. With no time left, Ryzen rushed out to school, even jokingly saying goodbye to his new spider pet. At first, he believed the spider would eventually leave on its own, but it didn't. The spider webs kept appearing every single day. Slowly, worry and curiosity began to grow inside him. What kind of spider was this anyway? Determined to find answers, he searched through books and articles in the university library, but found nothing. In the end, Ryzen gave up. After all, humans tend to adapt to things they experience repeatedly. Still, he wondered how long that would last. Days passed, and Ryzen gradually got used to the spider sharing his apartment. One evening, after returning from work, he checked the news again. Another disappearance had occurred in Tokyo. According to the headline, the missing schoolgirl lived dangerously close to his dorm. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted when his alarm rang. He had plans today, a date with his girlfriend. Ryzen had been dating Kiyoko for a month now, and he felt it was finally time to deepen their relationship. As he packed his bag, something stopped him. Spiderwebs clung to the doorway. Thinking it was just an accident, he ignored it and left. He didn't realize that something in the shadows was watching him, angry. After a short drive, Ryzen and Kiyoko arrived at the aquarium. Seeing her smile made him genuinely happy. Kiyoko, with her innocent charm, was amazed by everything around her. She even said it felt like they were at the bottom of the ocean, since this place had always been one of her dreams to visit. The joy in her sparkling eyes was impossible to miss. Watching her, Ryzen couldn't help but wonder why someone like her was even dating him. To be honest, he still couldn't believe it himself. Lost in thought, he barely noticed Kiyoko speaking to him. She told him she was worried about him and reminded him that he once mentioned wanting to talk about something important. Still, knowing how rare their dates were due to their busy schedules, she encouraged him to forget his worries for now and just enjoy the day. And he did. By nightfall, after dropping Kiyoko off at the station, Ryzen headed back home. His heart felt light, replaying the moments they had shared. But the moment he reached his apartment, his happiness vanished. The front door was completely covered in spiderwebs. He nearly tripped over them. And just like that, his good mood disappeared in an instant. However, it seemed that the worst was still yet to come. At first, Ryzen thought the spiderwebs were only covering his front door. But as soon as he stepped inside his apartment, he froze. The entire place was completely covered in webs. It had never been this bad before. What made it even more disturbing was the fact that this amount of webbing should have been impossible to create in just a few hours. As he looked closer, he noticed something else. These webs were different. They felt wrong. It was almost as if someone had lashed out in anger, leaving chaos behind. The webs gave off that exact feeling. Then, something even more terrifying caught his eye. Human hair. Ryzen stared at it in disbelief. This was no small matter, and his thoughts began to spiral. He tried to convince himself that everything was fine, that he was just overthinking things. But no matter how much he tried to lie to himself, he knew the truth. He was scared. None of this made sense. He hadn't seen any signs of an intruder. And since the windows were still tightly closed, he was certain of one thing. The spider was still inside the apartment. What troubled him the most was the hair. Still, being alone in such a large space, he tried one last time to calm himself. Maybe the webs were just dirty. Maybe it only looked like hair. After finally settling his nerves, Ryzen decided to go to sleep, hoping that everything would be normal the next day. But that hope didn't last long. Just as he was about to close his eyes, a cold breeze passed through his bedroom. Suddenly, a black silhouette shaped like a girl appeared right in front of him. Terrified, Ryzen shouted, "Who's there?" A girl with long, silky black hair stepped forward. Her beauty was undeniable, and Ryzen found himself staring in shock. Her red, shining eyes captivated him in a way he had never felt before. Before he even realized it, the girl bent over him, her movements slow and deliberate. Without warning, she kissed his neck and licked it with her wet tongue. Ryzen was completely stunned, struggling to understand what was happening. Seeing that she was wearing a school uniform, he tried to stay calm, thinking she might be troubled or lost. That was his mistake. Suddenly, she bit him with her fangs. The pain was sharp, and he realized she was sucking his blood. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then he felt something else, something entering his body. As he tried to push her away, she suddenly kissed him on the lips. His mind screamed to move, but his body refused to listen. It was as if he no longer had control over himself. His body began to move on its own. The girl seemed to enjoy it. Ryzen tried to fight back. He didn't want this. If he gave in, it felt like he was betraying Kiyoko and everything they shared. For what felt like an endless minute, the two remained entangled. Then, suddenly, control returned to him. He immediately tried to escape, but before he could even reach the door, the girl stopped him with her webs. Once again, his body froze. She refused to let him go. The web tightened, and she pulled him back. They began kissing again, and this time, he had no strength left to resist. What hurt the most was realizing that part of him was starting to enjoy it. He found her beautiful, charismatic. But deep down, he knew the truth. This was not a human. This was a monster. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the body of a second-year student named Mayara Yuko from Ashinosaka City, who had been missing for some time, was finally discovered. According to the news, something was horribly wrong with the corpse. All of her organs, including her brain, had been removed. The police immediately launched an investigation into this brutal murder. But the question remained, would they ever uncover the truth behind her death? For Ryzen, however, that night marked the moment when the charming monster trapped him completely, unable to move, unable to fight, and unable to save himself. The next day at the police department, Officer Daisuke Ono met with Yoshiaki Matsui, the department's lead forensic specialist, to review the autopsy results. To his disappointment, even Matsui couldn't reach a conclusion. It was the first time he had ever seen a body in such an unexplainable condition. No matter how much effort the investigators put in, they still couldn't determine the original appearance of the missing girl. Most of her internal organs were gone. Parts of her bones had been cut away. Only one arm and one leg remained, with just a thin strip of skin still connecting them to the body. Even imagining it was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Mayara Yuko's corpse looked like the leftovers of a wild animal's meal. According to Daisuke Ono's theory, the murderer may have devoured most of the body to prevent the murder weapon from being identified. By destroying the evidence, the killer could erase any clear clues. While this theory sounded reasonable, there was no way to prove it. At this stage, nothing could be confirmed. Neither the crime scene nor the corpse showed any traces that matched an animal. Even if something had eaten her and erased its tracks, there was no solid evidence to support that claim. Yoshiaki Matsui believed the cause of death was most likely extreme blood loss. A large blood stain had been found in the alley where the crime occurred. Because of this, there were still many unanswered questions surrounding Mayara's death. To be certain, Matsui wanted to continue investigating. To be honest, he personally believed this case might involve something far beyond human understanding, possibly a ghost, or even a monster. However, Officer Ono couldn't bring himself to believe in such ideas. Refusing to entertain superstition, he collected the autopsy report and prepared to leave. Before doing so, he reminded Matsui to contact him immediately if he discovered anything new. Once Ono left, Matsui was alone. He was convinced that what happened to Mayara was not the work of a human being. As he stared up at the ceiling of his office, something caught his eye, a spider crawling above him. He suddenly realized that he had been seeing spiders everywhere that day. Feeling exhausted, Matsui decided to call it a night. He packed up his things and walked toward the door, ready to go home and rest. But something horrifying awaited him. The moment he opened the door, he he was met with thousands of spiders swarming on the other side. In a split second, Matsui was overwhelmed and killed, without even getting the chance to fight back. Meanwhile, back at Ryzen's apartment, the sun was already shining, yet Ryzen was still trapped with the girl who had been using his body all night. No matter how hard he tried to move, his body remained pinned down. His blood was being drained, and once again he felt something entering his body. This routine had been repeating for several days. At this point, Ryzen had almost accepted his fate. When the girl finally stopped, he tried to talk to her. He asked why she was doing this to him, hoping to understand her intentions. But no matter what he said, she showed no sign of understanding his words. Failing to communicate was bad enough, but Ryzen had a bigger problem. While the girl clung tightly to his side, he turned on the TV to watch the news. He already knew what was coming. On the second morning after meeting her, he had seen the report. His heart nearly stopped in fear. The girl holding him had the exact same face as Mayara Yuko, the victim shown on the screen. But that was impossible. According to the news, Mayara was already dead. So how could she be here with him? That question consumed his mind. He tried to think of explanations. Maybe she was Mayara's sister. Maybe a classmate who looked exactly like her. But none of it made sense. If that were true, she wouldn't be standing here so casually. The uniform was the same. The face was identical. At that moment, Ryzen finally understood. Something was terribly wrong. Before he could think any further, it started again. His body stopped obeying him as the girl climbed on top of him once more. This time, however, he noticed something new. For just a brief moment, he saw the image of a giant spider. Ryzen's body no longer belonged to him. No matter how hard he tried to resist, he couldn't move. He was pinned to the bed, frozen, unable to fight back even a little. The girl began her nightly ritual once again. Meanwhile, on the news, the newscaster announced that Yoshiaki Matsui, a 38-year-old man who worked in the police prefecture, had been missing for 20 days. Of course, the truth behind his disappearance was already known. Back at the apartment, Ryzen showed no signs of resistance anymore. No matter what he tried, he couldn't escape the woman. Every attempt failed. His body would be controlled by an unknown force and dragged back to the room. He even tried locking her out. But no matter what he did, she always reappeared in the same place the very next moment. Calling for help was useless. Whenever the police arrived, she vanished without a trace. Because of this, Ryzen found himself living every day with the monster, who smiled as she held him close. At this point, the only thing on Ryzen's mind was the truth. Why was she doing this to him? Was she drawing energy from his blood? Was that the reason she kissed him so deeply, paralyzing his body every time? Her kisses only grew more intense with each passing day. Then, during one of those moments, Ryzen's phone rang. It was Kiyoko. He immediately answered the call. From her voice alone, it was clear that she was angry and worried. She scolded him for not going to school for weeks and for ignoring her messages. Ryzen tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop. His friends were worried too, and Kyoko's voice trembled as she spoke. He told her he was fine. He made excuses, saying he hadn't been feeling well and didn't want to worry anyone. But Kiyoko snapped back, telling him that ignoring her only made things worse. Hearing her upset because of him hurt Ryzen deeply. Still, he had no choice. There was no way he could explain what was really happening. Then came the worst possible news. Kiyoko said she was nearby and wanted to visit him. She even offered to stay the night and take care of him. Her kindness only made things more dangerous. In the back of his mind, Ryzen knew one thing clearly. If Kiyoko came inside that apartment, their relationship would be over. As he desperately tried to think of another excuse, the monster girl smiled quietly. It was as if she believed this was the perfect chance to tear them apart. Before he could stop it, it was already too late. Kiyoko was standing right in front of his door. She entered the apartment without hesitation and offered to make him lunch. Since she planned to stay the night, she said she needed to change in his room. Ryzen immediately tried to stop her. This only made Kiyoko suspicious. She asked him if there was something inside the room that she wasn't supposed to see. After a moment of silence, she teased him with a flustered smile, joking that maybe he had been looking at something inappropriate. She reassured him, saying she understood these things as a woman, but as his girlfriend, she still wanted to know how he was feeling. Before he could react, Kiyoko opened the door and rushed inside. Ryzen panicked, warning her that it was dangerous. But there was nothing there. Later, while Kiyoko was taking a bath, Ryzen stood frozen, wondering where the girl had gone. No silhouette, no presence. He realized something then. The monster hid herself whenever someone else was around. Trying not to worry Kiyoko, he forced himself to calm down. After a while, Kiyoko finished bathing. When she returned, she found Ryzen sitting quietly, reading a journal about the recent serial murder cases in their area. Kiyoko then shared some information she had heard about the case. According to rumors, the person who was captured was actually innocent. Because of that, fear had spread through the town once again. People believed it was no longer safe to walk alone at night. Kiyoko also mentioned something else that disturbed her. Based on what she knew, one of the victims was a high school student. In that case, all of the victim's internal organs had been removed. This shocked Ryzen. He couldn't understand how that was even possible. According to the reports, the body had already been eaten. Nothing about it made sense. Trying to lighten the mood, Kiyoko suggested that they should go to bed. However, what happened next was something Ryzen never expected. As they lay together, the warmth of Kyoko's body filled the bed. Despite her innocent appearance, she was clearly excited to be lying beside him. She slowly pressed closer, while Ryzen grew more and more nervous. For normal couples, this would have been natural. But because of the monster, Ryzen had to stay alert. When Kiyoko tried to take the first step and move things further, Ryzen stopped her. Not because he didn't want to, but because he knew what would happen if he let it continue. Just then, he sensed it. The monster was about to appear. Fearing for Kyoko's life, Ryzen suddenly hugged her tightly and shouted, begging the monster to stop. Kiyoko, not understanding what was happening, believed his reaction was meant for her. Because of his desperate action, the monster disappeared. But the damage had already been done. Kiyoko was deeply hurt and embarrassed. She quietly packed her things and prepared to leave. Ryzen tried to explain, but she couldn't even bring herself to look at him. She told him she needed time to clear her thoughts. Then she admitted that maybe he was right, that it was too early for them to go that far. She said she had simply rushed things. Ryzen tried again to explain himself, but Kiyoko was too embarrassed to continue the conversation. Still, before leaving, she reassured him. She told him not to feel guilty and said she hoped he wouldn't start hating her. She confessed that she loved him. Ryzen returned her feelings, hugging her tightly as she stepped out the door. Even though the day didn't end the way either of them wanted, Kiyoko forced a smile and walked away. As soon as she left, Ryzen was alone again in his dark apartment, filled with guilt. Before he could even process what had happened, the monster girl appeared once more. As expected, she did to him what he had refused to do with Kiyoko. On her way home, Kiyoko felt relieved knowing that Ryzen didn't hate her. Still, after what happened, she decided to be more careful with her actions from now on. Late at night, as she walked through the quiet streets, she suddenly felt something wrap around her wrist, a spider web. She quickly brushed it away, thinking it must have caught onto her when she left Ryzen's apartment, but for some reason she felt uneasy. It felt like someone, or something, was watching her from the shadows. Remembering all the recent disappearances, she hurried home, unaware that something terrible awaited her. As for Ryzen, he was always alone, and it seemed that would never change. Long ago, back when he was still in high school, something dark and traumatic had happened to him. Something that shaped everything he had become. Back then, a man named Akutsu Jr. tried to befriend Ryzen. Looking back, Akutsu had helped him far more than he ever expected. Just remembering those days made Ryzen realize how harsh life had been on him for a long time. He once believed that everything would eventually change. But now, with this monster girl suddenly appearing and ruining his life once again, Ryzen began to wonder just how cruel the world could really be. Weeks had passed since the girl appeared, and Ryzen was starting to grow irritated by how clingy she had become. For the first time in a long while, he told her to stay away from him, if only for a minute. All she ever did was hug him every morning, and no matter what he said, she was never satisfied. When he finally had a moment to breathe, Ryzen checked his phone to see if Kiyoko had sent him a message. To his relief, she had replied. It seemed she was no longer dwelling on what happened then. Still, Ryzen wanted to apologize properly and do something for her, but even that felt impossible. The monster girl couldn't stay away from him for more than a minute. In the end, Ryzen still had no idea what this woman was thinking. Even after being together for weeks, he knew nothing about her, why she was in his room or what she was injecting into him whenever she sucked his blood. That was also why her face looked identical to the girl who had been murdered weeks earlier. Ryzen was overwhelmed with questions. Waiting for her to speak was pointless. If he wanted answers, he would have to investigate her identity himself. On top of that, his refrigerator was nearly empty. He decided it was finally time to go out and buy groceries. Fortunately, he noticed something important. The girl didn't seem to hate him at all. So he tried begging her to let him leave just for a short while, but she didn't understand his words. He even showed her a map and tried to explain where he was going, but nothing worked. Then Ryzen thought of something. Every time he tried to chase her out, she always returned to his room. That gave him an idea. If survival was the goal, then perhaps he should do the opposite. He decided to invite her to go outside with him. After observing her behavior, Ryzen realized something strange. Whenever someone else entered his room, like when Kiyoko visited, the girl disappeared like smoke. She never showed herself to anyone but him. If his theory was correct, then from a human perspective, only Ryzen could see her. With that in mind, he was finally able to leave the apartment and go grocery shopping. While browsing the aisles, Ryzen suddenly bumped into an old friend, Akutsu Jr. Since it had been a long time since they last met, Akutsu invited him over to his apartment for a drink to catch up. He also admitted that he had been worried about Ryzen, since he hadn't seen him around campus lately. Ryzen also looked pale, almost sick. Akutsu had no idea his friend was being haunted by a monster disguised as a young girl. As they talked, Akutsu casually asked about Ryzen's relationship with Kiyoko. Like any curious guy, he joked about whether Ryzen had kissed her during their aquarium date. Hearing that made Ryzen feel guilty again. His relationship with Kiyoko had already been damaged because of what happened that night. Thinking it was just a small lover's quarrel, Akutsu tried to cheer him up. He even started bragging about how experienced he was with romance, promising to give Ryzen tips so his next date wouldn't fail. Akutsu could be a bit much at times, but Ryzen was grateful to have him as a friend. They talked for hours. Eventually, Akutsu noticed they were out of cigarettes and offered to buy more. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps more than you think. And if you'd like to support me further, consider joining my Patreon. I'm not making much from the channel at the moment, so every bit of support truly means a lot. You'll get ad-free videos and shoutouts as a thank you for helping me keep this going. Now, back to the video. While he was gone, Ryzen stepped out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. The cold night breeze wrapped around his skin. Nearby, Akutsu's neighbor was playing the guitar, soft music filling the background. As he listened, Ryzen suddenly thought about the monster girl again. He realized that maybe she wouldn't reveal herself in crowded places. Still, the idea that she could transform into a spider and follow him anywhere sent a chill through his body. What if he could never escape her? For now, he clung to one hope. Maybe, as long as he stayed with other people, the monster wouldn't appear. At least that's what he wanted to believe. Just as his heart began to calm down, something unexpected happened. A spider suddenly appeared out of nowhere. This time, the spider moved toward Akutsu Jr., Ryzen's friend next door. Before Ryzen could react, Akutsu Jr. arrived, bringing fresh packs of cigarettes for them. But then Ryzen noticed something that made his stomach drop, a spider web clinging to Akutsu Jr.'s shoulder. He knew immediately that no matter what he did, the monster wouldn't go away. Worried that his friend might be pulled into this nightmare, Ryzen asked where the web had come from. Akutsu explained that he had taken a shortcut on the way over and got caught in a web. Ryzen tried to calm himself. Spiders didn't scare him, except for that one girl. As long as it wasn't her, he told himself, everything would be fine. But deep down, his body betrayed him. Soon things began to spiral out of control. Ryzen found himself outside his apartment, confronted with a horrifying scene. Dead bodies were scattered everywhere. Some were missing legs, others crushed. The worst sight of all was a body wrapped entirely in spiderweb, his own. Ryzen's nightmare reached its peak and he woke up suddenly. It had been just a dream. After drinking heavily the night before, both Akutsu Jr. and Ryzen had been knocked out. Yet the monster girl had carried out her usual nightly routine with Ryzen. Now, as she sucked his blood on the balcony, Akutsu Jr. woke up. Confused, he asked Ryzen what was going on. But Ryzen had already lost himself in despair, desperate to escape the monster. Unable to explain what was happening, Akutsu didn't understand the situation and tried to calm him. Panic gripped Ryzen. To make matters worse, the monster girl had started trying to speak. Knowing the danger, Ryzen decided he had to leave immediately. When Akutsu asked what was happening, Ryzen simply said something urgent had come up and ran. He realized that staying with others wouldn't solve anything. As he rushed home, he thought about staying away from Kiyoko too. He didn't want to put his friends or loved ones in danger. This monster was no ordinary threat. It was deadly. Passing by the playground, Ryzen's fears were confirmed. The neighbor who had been singing earlier lay dead, tied and hanging from the playground grills. Part of his internal organs had been removed, just like in the other murder. Everything was starting to make sense. Ryzen's stomach churned. He remembered a case involving a high school girl whose internal organs had been removed. At that moment, he finally understood who the real culprit behind the mysterious murders was. Knowing things were spiraling out of control, Ryzen decided to speak with his uncle, Dasaki, who was a police officer. During dinner, Dasaki prepared hot pot for them, trying to make the conversation lighter. As soon as Ryzen asked about recent incidents in town, Dasaki's face fell. He looked defeated. The chances of catching this serial killer are getting slimmer, Dasaki admitted. And to make things worse, the chief is criticizing me for risking my life in the field. The forensics team, they aren't much help either. For a moment, even the hot pot lost its appeal, weighed down by the horrors of the murders. Dasaki then glanced at Ryzen and wondered why his nephew was so interested in these cases. But seeing how determined Ryzen was, he decided to tell him everything he knew. In total, there were 6 victims that Ryzen had learned about so far. The first victim was an honorary member of the Okada Shingo 37 construction company. The cause of death appeared to involve an industrial machine, so it wasn't widely discussed at first. The second victim was Mayara Yuko, age 17. A few days before her body was found, the police had received a missing person report. The report noted that all her internal organs had been removed, but the description barely captured the horror. Her body looked as if it had been preyed upon by some monstrous creature. Dasaki found the case just as strange. Forensics suggested that the injuries were so unusual that they could almost be the work of a ghost or monster. The third victim had their hands and feet cut off, which were then placed in a university atrium. The fourth victim's limbs were arranged as if for some kind of ritual, and the torso was holding its severed head. The fifth victim's body had been dissected evenly and scattered across a road with no care whatsoever. And then there was the sixth victim. Hearing these horrific accounts, Ryzen asked his uncle if it was possible that all the murders were done by the same person. Dasaki paused, then noted a disturbing connection. Starting from Mayara, all the victims shared a similar pattern. Internal organs were removed. Some organs, including the brain, had been taken from 4 of the victims. The third victim's stomach was missing. The fourth victim's liver was removed. The fifth victim was missing a lung and kidneys. Despite all of this, no one could determine the killer's motive. Was it a madman, a pervert with an organ fetish, or something else? Dasaki was certain that, despite what others in the office believed, these crimes were impossible to attribute to a ghost or monster. But Ryzen already knew the truth. These murders were not the work of a human. The entity was something else entirely, something pretending to look human. Ryzen realized that as soon as Dasaki arrived, the monster would vanish and hide somewhere. Or perhaps there was more to the story than he could yet understand. Not wanting to reveal too much, Ryzen kept his knowledge to himself. He knew his uncle wouldn't believe him so easily. As they began eating, Dasaki received a call. Another victim had been discovered. The seventh. Watching his uncle leave, Ryzen felt a pang of guilt. He felt sorry for him. Though he couldn't say anything about the murders, he was certain the monster was behind them. As soon as Dasaki left, Ryzen went to his bedroom. Just as he expected, the monster girl was waiting for him. She hugged him, and he wondered where she had been before arriving. When the neighbor was killed, the news had already reported the seventh victim, yet Ryzen couldn't find a trace of the monster. Was it all a coincidence? Or was he overthinking things? There was no evidence to answer that question. Ryzen didn't know what to do about her, but one thing was certain: if she ever hurt someone he loved, he wouldn't hesitate to stop her, by any means necessary. And yet every day she returned to him. This time her movements were more intense, and Ryzen felt increasingly uncomfortable. He felt hopeless. The way she manipulated him, mimicking the actions of lovers, was unbearable. And the worst part, he hadn't done any of this with Kiyoko, his real girlfriend. That made the experience feel even more unbearable. However, no matter what he does, he can't seem to fight it at all. While he trembles in fear and anger, this girl is literally trembling with joy. Meanwhile, somewhere in the university, Kiyoko and Jr. were able to bump into each other in the same class. Since this was the only time they could talk, Jr. immediately grabbed the opportunity to ask Kiyoko about Ryzen. While she worked on one of her paintings, Jr. informed her that he had happened to meet Ryzen the other day and invited him to his apartment for a drink. But the next series of events shocked Jr. to the core. He tried to summarize everything to Kiyoko, stating that Ryzen had been acting strangely that day. On top of that, their discovery of the murdered victim made the situation even worse. Seeing worry in Kiyoko's eyes, Jr. immediately assured her that Ryzen was fine and that the police had already questioned him. Although witnessing the dismembered body had already traumatized Jr., seeing how distressed Ryzen had been that night made him wonder what was actually happening. No matter how they thought about it, Ryzen's behavior was definitely strange, and Kiyoko could not deny it either. The day she had visited his apartment, she had felt the same eerie vibe. Usually entering someone's room doesn't create such a feeling, but when Kiyoko stepped into Ryzen's room, that exact sensation hit her. Ryzen, known by everyone as a happy-go-lucky guy who always smiles, was suddenly just afraid. For some reason, both Kiyoko and Jr. noticed that Ryzen had become strange and seemed utterly terrified. This behavior had apparently started 2 weeks ago, the same day authorities found the third victim in the bizarre murder case. Since Ryzen's situation was getting out of hand, Kiyoko decided to pay him a visit after class to check on him. Jr. agreed it was a good idea, fearing that if they didn't regularly see him, he might be the next person to disappear suddenly. All in all, they knew they could only do what they could for now, and there was no other way to help. For the moment, since they were still working on their art class project, Jr. went on to observe Kiyoko's work. Kiyoko explained that this painting was not just a forest bath, but an expression of air. For her, it wasn't only the air itself that made up the world, it was the composition of its components. Expressing those components through color was her favorite way of painting. The gray part represented oxygen, while the yellow represented carbon dioxide. She also planned to include many tiny particles scattered throughout, drawing them in as much detail as possible. As they continued to chat, Junior suddenly noticed a bunch of eerie paintings hidden behind the curtains. Taking a closer look, he was shocked to see they were more gory than creative. Kiyoko explained that this was the work of Fukutang, one of the students. Based on what she knew, he often painted this kind of disturbing work. For him, death and destruction symbolized life and creation. While these subjects were somewhat common in artistic minds, the detail in one of the paintings looked exactly like the image of Junior's neighbor's dead body. This shocked Junior to the core. He immediately asked Kiyoko how to contact Fukutang, wanting to ask him something important. During one sunny day, Ryzen and his older brother went fishing. As they were about to head home, something beyond Ryzen's wildest imagination happened. His older brother was stabbed mercilessly by an unknown man while trying to save him. Ryzen looked at his dying brother's body, wishing that he could have taken his place. His brother weakly asked why Ryzen was the one alive. Why not both of them? As Ryzen felt increasingly distressed, he suddenly woke up from the dream. Realizing it had been just a nightmare, he felt immediate relief. He knew well that his older brother would never say such a thing. As he starts to feel down, the monster girl reaches out and touches him, as if trying to comfort him. At first, Ryzen tries to stop her. However, she uses her power to force his body to stay still. Surprisingly, instead of making him uncomfortable, her actions actually help him calm down. For the first time in a long while, Ryzen finally opens up to someone about what he truly feels regarding the incident from years ago. He realizes that he has been suffering from survivor's guilt ever since his brother died. His older brother was a great person, someone loved by everyone in the community. Because of that, Ryzen always felt that he was the one to blame for his brother's tragic death. When he was rescued back then, instead of being comforted, his parents asked him why he was the one who survived. At that moment, Ryzen realized that because of his brother, he would never receive the same love from others. After that, people looked at him with silent, judging eyes. Because of this, he stopped bonding with others altogether. The only person who truly cared for him was his uncle, Dasaki, who lived in Tokyo. For a long time, Ryzen felt completely alone. He was lonely most of the time, and pretending to be strong only made things harder. Hearing all of this makes the monster sympathize with him. Surprisingly, she tries to comfort him, assuring him that she will always stay by his side from now on. After moving to this new city, Ryzen finally gained a girlfriend and a friend. To him, they feel too good to deserve someone like him. That is why, for the first time, Ryzen gently asks the girl to give him his normal life back. However, it seems that this will never truly happen. Over the next few days, Ryzen slowly gets used to living with her. Ever since Uncle Dasaki visited, Ryzen begins carefully watching the monster's movements at night. What unsettles him the most is that she never leaves his side while he sleeps, yet from time to time she disappears for hours. Not long after, the bodies of new victims from the strange murder cases are discovered. The third case happened right after Kiyoko visited his apartment. The others occurred while Ryzen was away as well. Although his theory is still forming, the pattern is becoming clear. Since it has only been 5 days since he started observing her, Ryzen remains cautious and discreet. No matter how closely he watches her, there are no clear signs to follow. In fact, it seems like she simply enjoys teasing him throughout the night. Looking at her beautiful face, Ryzen reminds himself that she is not the real Mayara. If this monster truly killed her and consumed her organs, then human blood alone may not be her only source of food. Her behavior toward him is strange and confusing. Deep inside, Ryzen wonders why she has not killed him yet, if she truly needs humans to survive. After confirming his suspicions, he becomes even more careful. If another victim appears soon, her guilt will be undeniable. Even if Ryzen wants to turn her into the police, he knows she would vanish instantly. That is why he decides to play along with her for now. Once he has undeniable proof, he plans to get rid of her himself. One night, he pins her down on the bed. For the first time, Ryzen is on top of her. However, his intention is not what it seems. He plans to strangle her. But the moment he realizes that killing her would feel no different from killing a human, he hesitates and pulls back. That hesitation disappears instantly when he hears the news. A new victim has been found. And this time, it is not just anyone. Akutsu Jr., Ryzen's best friend, has been discovered dead, his organs removed. At that moment, everything inside Ryzen goes numb. For the first time, he does not hesitate. He decides that this monster must be killed, no matter what. At this moment, Ryzen begins to reminisce about his memories with Junior. He remembers a time when he asked Junior why he even bothered getting involved with someone like him. Since Ryzen was used to people hating him because of what happened to his brother, he assumed Junior would eventually feel the same way. Ryzen was fully aware of his own flaws. He knew he was gloomy, distant, and afraid of people. Because of that, he believed he had no real merits as a person. Hearing Ryzen talk this way made Junior visibly annoyed. To Junior, friendship was not about someone's strengths or weaknesses. Spending time with someone based on merit alone was not friendship at all. To reassure him, Junior explained his reason in the most creative and honest way he could. Hearing how genuine and down-to-earth Junior was, Ryzen couldn't help but feel happy. He felt truly thankful for the friendship Junior had given him. That is why, after learning that Junior was dead, Ryzen could no longer hold back his anger toward the girl. Without hesitation, he demands to know if she was the one who killed Junior, and the neighbors as well. Instead of answering, the girl simply reaches out, trying to hug him. However, Ryzen is not in the mood for comfort. He feels like he has been played. Just the other day, he had opened up to her about how important Junior and Kiyoko were to him. Knowing that she may have committed such a horrifying act after hearing that makes him feel deeply betrayed. Thinking about how painful, terrifying, and lonely Junior's final moments must have been makes Ryzen feel sick. Junior only got involved with him, and that connection to this monster ended up costing him his life. It feels as though Ryzen himself pulled the trigger. The guilt crushes him. What makes it worse is that, without realizing it, he almost allowed his emotions toward this monster to sway him. If he had realized the truth earlier, he would have already gone all in. For the first time, Ryzen strikes the girl and tells her to get away from him. He no longer wants her touching him, especially knowing those hands are the same ones that killed Junior. Even as he hits her again and again, the woman refuses to let go. Trembling, she continues to hug him, but fueled by rage, Ryzen hits her harder this time. He reminds himself that no matter how innocent her eyes look, she is still a monster, the one who drinks his blood every night, feeds on human organs, and took Junior's life. However, despite the anger Ryzen feels right now, seeing the girl cry as he hits her makes him feel guilty about what he is doing. At that moment, Ryzen remembers what Junior once told him, that he can be cold and tyrannical. Even though he beat her badly, the girl still managed to smile at him. Instead of fighting back, she suddenly kissed him on the lips, reminding him that the love she has for him is endless. And just like that, the girl disappeared. By carrying this heavy guilt and sacrifice in his heart, Ryzen was able to return to his normal daily life. After such an intense experience, he eventually fell asleep from exhaustion and stress. However, every time he woke up, he still could not accept the fact that his friend was dead. To him, it still did not feel real. After that incident, the girl did not appear for a long time. During this period, Ryzen began to question why the monster never used her powers on him. He also wondered why his emotions felt so confused and unstable. Then suddenly, he received a call from Kiyoko. Without hesitation, he answered it right away. On the other end, Kiyoko sounded shaken and distressed. She told Ryzen that she needed to see him immediately and talk to him in person. However, it was not for the reason he expected. While crying on the phone, Kiyoko said something that completely confused Ryzen. She told him that she believes she might be the one who actually killed Junior. As soon as the call ended, Ryzen immediately went to Kiyoko to find out what was really going on. When he arrived, Kiyoko rushed forward and hugged him tightly, clearly feeling relieved. After everything that had happened, the two of them took a moment to calm down and talk. During this time, Kiyoko finally told Ryzen everything she knew about Junior's death. She explained that she wanted to tell him about Fugiting, since he was the last person Junior tried to meet. According to Kiyoko, Fugiting is a strange man who paints disturbing images of dead bodies. About 1 week ago, Junior had come to the art building to talk about Ryzen's situation. Kiyoko explained how worried they both were about Ryzen, and how they had been discussing ways to help him feel better. And while they were talking, Junior suddenly turned pale after seeing one of the paintings made by Fugiting. Without hesitation, Junior asked Kiyoko for Fugiting's contact information. She gave it to him, but to her surprise, Junior actually went to see Fugiting. Based on the last messages Junior sent her, it seemed like he already had a bad feeling about the meeting. In fact, he told Kiyoko beforehand that if he did not come back, she should call the police right away. After Junior was murdered, Kiyoko tried to contact Fugiting, but he had locked himself inside his apartment. The police searched his place for evidence, but they found nothing, and he did not seem strongly connected to the previous cases either. Because of this, Kiyoko blamed herself. She believed that if she had not given Junior Fugiting's contact information, he might still be alive. Meanwhile, Ryzen struggled to understand what was happening. Why did Junior react so strongly after seeing the painting? To find out, Ryzen asked if he could see the painting Kiyoko was talking about. After hearing everything, he also asked for Fugiting's contact information. Kiyoko broke down in tears and begged Ryzen not to go any further, but Ryzen pleaded with her. saying that Junior must have seen some kind of evidence in the painting that was connected to the murders. Since the police were getting nowhere, he felt that he had to find the truth himself. For him, uncovering Junior's killer was the only way he could mourn his friend. However, that plan seemed impossible, because after Junior's death, the paintings had already been taken away. That only made things even more suspicious. Taking the paintings at a time like this did not feel right at all. With no other choice, Ryzen asked Kiyoko if she could still remember what the paintings looked like. Although she did not want to remember them, Kiyoko tried her best. Based on her memory, she described several images. One painting showed a corpse being crushed by a digger. Another showed a high school girl cut open, with her arms and legs removed like a Russian doll. There was also a painting of a body covered in strange symbols or magic-like patterns. From her descriptions alone, Ryzen realized that these paintings matched the exact condition of the victims when they were found by the authorities. But what truly shocked him was the last image Kiyoko described, a man with his right abdomen cut open, tied to a pole as part of some form of torture. Now, understanding why Junior went to see Fugiting, Ryzen decided to do the same to learn more about the incident. Without wasting any time, he went straight to Fugiting's apartment. As soon as they met, Ryzen told him that he was interested in his artwork, especially the pieces that had been displayed at the art exhibition. Ryzen believed that Junior must have discovered something through Fugiting's art. If that discovery was the reason Junior was killed, then Ryzen could not simply ignore it. Even though it was dangerous, this was the only way he could get closer to the truth. After hearing that Ryzen was interested in his work, Fugiting immediately brought him to his private studio. The apartment itself already felt eerie, but the studio was even worse. Once inside, Ryzen was shocked by the unsettling atmosphere. The two of them sat down to talk. Fugiting began explaining that life and death are like two sides of the same coin, two parallel lines that can never cross. He claimed that neither could ever replace the other. Ryzen slowly grew impatient. Fugiting had been repeating the same speech again and again. From the beginning, he avoided answering direct questions and kept rambling excitedly about art like a madman. Fugiting then told Ryzen to drink the tea he had prepared. At first, Ryzen hesitated, unsure of what Fugiting might have added to it. But after noticing that Fugiting had been drinking from the same pot for a while, he decided to try it to gain his trust. To his surprise, the tea tasted good. Now that the atmosphere had calmed, Ryzen began asking the questions that mattered. He first asked about the paintings that were displayed in the art building and where they were now. Fugiting calmly replied that he considered them failures and had thrown them away. Realizing that subtlety would not work, Ryzen chose to be direct. Without hesitation, he asked Fugiting about the serial murder case. The moment he mentioned it, Fugiting's expression changed. Ryzen continued, explaining that the paintings were extremely similar to the crime scenes, and asked if Fugiting knew anything about the murders. Fugiting then asked if Ryzen had truly looked at his paintings. It seemed clear that Ryzen never had real interest in his work. Understanding this, Ryzen honestly admitted that he had never really studied the paintings. He then confessed that his interest in Fugiting's art was a lie. The real reason Ryzen came here was to find out whether Fugiting had any connection to the murder cases. He also wanted to ask about the man who came to see him, and ended up as a corpse the very next day. Junior. Fugiting found Ryzen interesting, since not many people are willing to admit that they are lying. What surprised him even more was that Ryzen was openly accusing him of murder. Although Ryzen never saw the paintings himself, everything Kiyoko described matched the victims exactly. What truly caught Fugiting's attention was the fact that Ryzen somehow knew these details. When Fugiting asked how he knew so much, Ryzen admitted that he was the one who discovered the fifth case. As for the other cases, he learned about them by asking someone close to him, his uncle, Dasiki. That was why he knew more about the murders than most people in town. Hearing this made Fugiting uneasy, since the paintings matched exactly what Ryzen saw at the crime scene. In reality, the case Ryzen witnessed was the sixth one. He only said fifth to see how Fugiting would react and whether he would slip up. According to Fugiting, the paintings were simply his way of expressing the art of death. He claimed there was nothing special about them and that he painted them purely out of artistic impulse. That, he said, was why they resembled the murder cases. However, Ryzen was not convinced. He then asked, "What about the third case?" Fugiting explained that it represented the feeling of hopelessness after losing all four limbs. At that point, the desire to live would actually grow stronger. Fugiting continued. For the fourth case, he said he was inspired by the works of Leonardo da Vinci. By using the structure of the human body, he felt he could express emotions beautifully. According to him, all the similarities were unconscious and completely unrelated to the murders. Still, Ryzen found it impossible to believe. He pointed out that the fifth case he witnessed was exactly the same as one of Fugiting's paintings. Hearing this shocked Fugiting. Ryzen then added that, based on Kiyoko's descriptions, all the other paintings matched the crime scenes as well. How could Fugiting guess the details so perfectly? If he had nothing to do with the crimes, then he should not know such specific information. Fugiting insisted it was all just coincidence, but Ryzen refused to accept that answer. Not only were the images accurate, even the number of cases matched perfectly. With rage building inside him, Ryzen finally shouted and demanded to know what Fugiting did to Junior. Fugiting stayed silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and began saying strange things. He claimed that if certain methods were used incorrectly, it was possible to summon a monster by accident. He also said that the speed of his paintings depended on how fast his talent could move. What Fugiting showed next sent chills down Ryzen's spine. He revealed a newly finished painting. Rai was stunned. It was Junior. Fugiting then said that curiosity kills the cat. If neither he nor Junior had noticed these strange things, they would never have encountered a monster like her. In the end, Fugiting admitted that he was behind the series of murders, together with what he called the goddess in black clothes. And the next sacrifice was going to be Ryzen, just as he feared. It turned out Fugiting had poisoned the tea. The paralysis was supposed to work immediately, but it acted slower than expected, which even made Fugiting nervous. But now that Ryzen could no longer move, the pleasure of art could begin once again. Fugiting mocked him, saying Junior's body was perfect. It had not been overused. He was a professional athlete with strong muscles and a well-built body. At that moment, Fugiting decided that stripping Junior of his skin would be best. He captured Junior, gagged him, and tied him up. Normally, Fugiting would never have been able to overpower him, but these were not normal circumstances. He had to think differently. Using the small milk carton Ryzen noticed earlier, Fugiting carried out his plan. The carton was designed to be easily opened and resealed. Inside was milk mixed with anesthetics. Neither Ryzen nor Junior ever imagined they had poisoned themselves. Fugiting clearly remembered Junior telling him to turn himself in, but he never once considered it. Before choosing the path of art, Fugiting had wanted to become a doctor. He had attended science lectures and learned a great deal about the human body. With that knowledge, he turned anatomy into art. Junior became one of his greatest masterpieces. Every time he peeled his skin, the look of pain on Junior's face filled Fugiting with joy. The sight of blood spraying everywhere was beautiful to him. Fugiting's mood shifted constantly. Since birth, he had questioned life itself. Why do organisms move? Where does the human soul go? These thoughts led him to his first victims: animals, insects, frogs, snakes, fish. He loved trapping them, dissecting them, and studying their insides. His parents opposed this behavior. When they discovered he had been dissecting pets, they tried to correct him through violence and abuse. Ironically, this only taught him more. Those brutal feelings never left him. Without realizing it, he became someone capable of performing surgery under the law. If things had gone differently, he might have become a doctor. Instead, he chose art. That was why he preferred to be called a monster, an artist who expresses humanity and death with elegance and simplicity. He claimed this was his destiny. But instead of respect, Fugiting was met with ridicule. Ryzen laughed at him, mocking his words, treating them as nothing more than a joke. To make things even worse for Fugiting, Ryzen suddenly stood up, now completely free from the paralysis. This shocked Fugiting, since the anesthetic should not have worn off yet. Although Fugiting claimed that he was a monster, Ryzen personally thought otherwise. For him, this man was not something of that level. He was simply trapped inside his own fantasy. Instead of calling him a monster or an artist, the most fitting word for him was a murderer. Even though things were no longer going his way, Fugiting was still confident that he could take Ryzen down. But before he could do anything, the sound of the doorbell rang. Fugiting froze, wondering who it could be. To his horror, it was the police. Ryzen had contacted Kiyoko before coming here, and everything Fugiting said had already been recorded and heard by the authorities. At that moment, Fugiting began screaming, desperately asking for help and shouting about the entity he was seeing. Now completely broken, he could do nothing as the police stood at his door. As he was being handcuffed, Fugiting wondered why the goddess in black clothes had abandoned him. He kept offering sacrifices, yet she never once came to his side. 3 days passed since the arrest of Schwaker Tattoo, also known as Fugiting. Under Kiyoko's invitation, Ryzen visited her room. After hearing about what happened, his uncle had beaten him, and he went home shaking. On the morning of the second day, Ryzen received many calls and messages from Kiyoko. Even though she had helped him so much, he had not met her until now. Feeling guilty for worrying her, Ryzen comforted her and assured her that everything was finally over. Junior could now rest in peace. Still, even with Fugiting locked away, Ryzen could not stop thinking about the goddess in black clothes. In the back of his mind, he wondered if she was the same woman he had seen before. Maybe there was a connection between Fugiting and that monster. But for now, Ryzen chose not to think about it. He wanted to enjoy the moment and simply be with Kiyoko. Since it had been a long time since they talked like this, Kiyoko decided to cook lunch for him. They teased each other and talked for hours. Eventually, Kiyoko asked if he wanted to turn on the TV. To their surprise, a breaking news report appeared. The newscaster announced that Schwaker Tattoo, also known as Fugiting, the recently captured suspect in the serial murder cases, was found dead in custody. Both Ryzen and Kiyoko were stunned. According to the news, the police were investigating the case as possible self-harm. In the end, it seemed Fugiting had offered himself to art, even in death. Still, Ryzen could not understand why things had ended this way. Kiyoko spoke with a sad expression, saying that some artists live in worlds others can agree with, while some live in places ordinary people can never understand. Ryzen still could not make sense of it. Even though Fugiting showed no regret, Ryzen could not believe that dying would bring him any happiness. Since everything had already passed, it no longer felt important to dwell on it. Ryzen did not want to understand Fugiting's thoughts, but he was sure they had something to do with that woman. Even though he wanted answers about the goddess in black clothes, he believed she had no direct connection to this case. After the criminal was caught, Fugiting's body was returned to his family for burial. As a final farewell, Ryzen planned to attend Junior's funeral. Although Junior lost his life, Ryzen was glad to return to a normal life. No monsters, no murders, just peace. Still, he could not ignore the fact that things would never be the same again. Seeing how shaken he was, Kiyoko tried to comfort him and reassure him that everything would be fine. Just when Ryzen thought things were finally settling down, something unexpected happened. Kiyoko began saying strange things. She told him that she would not attend Junior's funeral. Ryzen assumed she was still troubled by Fugiting's case, so he reassured her that none of it was her fault. But what she said next sent chills through his body. According to her, that case had little to do with Fugiting. The truth was that Junior would have hated seeing her at his funeral, because she was the one who removed his organs. At that moment, Ryzen realized it was not over yet. All this time, he believed Kiyoko was someone he could trust, but she was nothing like what he thought. After being struck by something, Ryzen lost consciousness for a moment. When he woke up, he found himself inside one of Kiyoko's rooms in her apartment. As she began to speak, her words sounded strangely familiar to Ryzen. In that moment, he finally realized the truth. The goddess in black clothes that Fugiting talked about was actually Kiyoko all along. According to Kiyoko, she and Fugiting were not partners at first. She only approached him out of curiosity and personal interest. However, Fugiting did an excellent job. When she talked to him, he listened to everything she said. Even when it damaged his own art, he still offered her what she wanted. Ryzen immediately became angry and demanded to know what she meant by that. Kiyoko explained that to complete her art, something important must never be missing. She then showed Ryzen the artwork she had been working on for a long time. This was the same piece Junior saw the last time he was alive. It was the work Kiyoko had devoted her entire life to finishing. It was a painting of a lake drawn only in red and purple. The reason for this was simple. The theme of the painting was humanity. Since Ryzen could not understand what she meant, Kiyoko decided to explain. According to her, a boat drifting on a lake is the perfect symbol of a human life. The boat and the lake surface exist together in harmony. Unlike a river, a lake has no current. The boat may try to reach the shore, drift aimlessly, or slowly sink into the depths. Meanwhile, the forest, sky, and sun silently watch as the boat follows its path. In short, the painting represents a human life. But if that were all, Kiyoko said it would be boring. That is why she chose a more creative material to paint humanity. Kiyoko then revealed the truth. She used the internal organs she and Fugiting collected from their victims. To provoke Ryzen, she casually opened a drawer and showed him intestines as if they were nothing special. She went even further, describing in detail how impressive Fugiting was at peeling Junior's skin. According to her, even for a medical school graduate, that level of skill was rare. What made her happiest was the moment Junior finally saw her artwork. His shocked expression amused her so much that she wished she could relive it again. But what she enjoyed the most were his screams as she worked. Hearing all of this made Ryzen feel sick. He could barely look at Kiyoko anymore. Kiyoko then stepped closer and ordered him to look straight at her face. It seemed she desperately wanted him to witness her creative process. At that moment, the only question in Ryzen's mind was why. Why did everything turn out this way? For the first time in his life, he had been truly happy, but realizing that all the memories he shared with Kiyoko were lies shattered him completely. All this time, he believed the Spider Woman was responsible for the murders. But learning that the woman he loved was the real culprit made everything far worse. Kiyoko told Rai that he was wrong because, at least during the event of Junya, he was also a partner in crime, as she grabbed him from his neck. She then, coming closer to him, told him that she wanted to hear one more time him saying that you are lying. Scared, as he looked at the Junya's organs lying on the plate, he said as was told. She, with a big smile on her face, told him that it must be great to be at one with his friend in the stomach. After that, holding Junya, she walked towards the juicer jug and told him that it was time for him to say goodbye to Junya. He was shocked to hear that. She further added that, as she had told him before, that this painting, the meat pie, all used a special ingredient. He tried to stop her from doing it. However, she didn't pay him any attention and asked that did he say goodbye to Junya, then told him that she would start the juicer now while saying goodbye Junya. He cried for her to stop, but nothing in the world could make her do that as she pushed the juicer button. This was enough, he thought. Looking down at himself being tied to a chair, he thought that it didn't matter who, but he wanted someone to save him. At that moment, a girl was seen jumping from one roof to another. As Kiyoko mixed different ingredients on a color palette, she looked back at Rai and asked him whether he was looking properly. She then told him that she had also talked with Junya before, as she believed in using organic material in her art. Then, pointing towards the painting, she further added that so this portrayed the logic of humanity and life in the painting. At the same time, she represent them as she used them as a paint. Then, pointing at different points, she told that at this point she used stomach, and then pointing towards others, she told him that she used liver in that part, and on the other, the pancreas. Beside, it was true that juice from crushed organs didn't have color on its own, so she also used painting to go over it again. So, it was only a normal painting if you look at it, but it actually consisted of humanity in it. And then asked him, that wasn't this incredible, and didn't it make him shiver? Rai thought about the organs taken from all the murders. So, basically, those were the offerings of Todo to Kiyoko. Beside, did it have any relation to that person, or was the person who murdered her was Kiyoko? He then heard Kiyoko calling his name, seeing him lost in thought. He asked her that why did she kill Junya, as all the victims, except for Junya, didn't have any relation to them guys. So why was it that Junya was her target this time? Even if she said that it was because she nearly got discovered, but killing the person in question might got her exposed. She told him that it was because timing was perfect. And then, smiling at him, she in a conspiratorial tone told him that it was because she suddenly thought of something that was more exciting. Kiyoko Yoshimuro then started telling him about herself, that her fellows used to praise her that she was such a good girl and that her parents raised her to have great values. Beside for them, she was always on her best behavior and acted so mature for her age. Moreover, she really gave off that honor student vibe, and she was so gentle and kind, but Kiyoko herself found all these praises so annoying. She was so sick and tired of it all. She hated boring, ordinary people like them who had different personalities for everyone they talked to. She couldn't imagine being such a waste of space, as she would never want to live a life where she don't accomplish anything and just sit around and work. Her parents always called her a good girl and told her that they were so proud of her, making her think like that was what they only thought about her. Still, she failed to escape from those shackles, as, after all, that was what she was. Kiyoko Yoshimuro, the normal, ordinary girl. She thought that if she went off to college and left town, she would definitely change. But no matter where she went, Kiyoko, the model citizen, never left. She wondered how different things would be if she had a boyfriend. At that moment, she saw him as he collided with someone, and his things fell off on the ground. When she looked at him, his eyes were the darkest she had ever seen. She thought, what despair given his eyes such fairy-like bleakness, and wanted to know. As she handed him his papers from the ground, and asked him which grade he was in, and found out that they were in same grade. She then introduced herself and told him that she was from art department and requested him to take care of her, and that was how they became closer and eventually lovers. However, after they started going out, the darkness in his eyes disappeared. He started smiling and looking happy, and eventually became an ordinary boring guy, hence started to bore her. Moreover, she wanted to feel alive, which good girl like Kiyoko could never feel so. At that time, she met a man she was destined to meet who was crushing the skull of someone. He told her that he was trying to portray the composition of a skull crushed by heavy machinery. Now, this wasn't art, and she should run away, but then while passing by, her eyes laid on a body in a coffin. It was completely different than her relative's body she saw at the funeral. It was like straight out of TV show or novel. Looking at a mutilated corpse up like that, she thought that she was also going to be silenced by this killer. She found it too bizarre. He asked him that could she be Kiyoko Yashimiro? He then told her that he was hoping that no one from his university would see his work. She told him that she knew it was an art piece. He told her that it was supposed to be, but he failed at it. He wanted to make it more impactful. Moreover, he asked to relocate now. She told him that he didn't need to worry as she would keep his secret. She then, in a seductive voice, told him that she wanted to know more about his art. He told her that he was so happy to hear that, as she was the first person who took interest in his art. She was impressed at his delusions, but played along, and told him that, even though they just met, it seemed like a destiny. She has finally found a strange and unordinary person. He was what she has been looking for, someone who lived his own way, instead of following the norm. She hugged him and told him that she was looking for him everywhere. After finishing off her story, she turned towards Ray and told him that was all about it. And hasn't he found it romantic? Ray looked at him with fury. She then told him that she wanted people who would understand this art to see it, but she got curious about what he would think if he saw it. As meeting new people, getting to know them, open your heart to them was what Kiyoko was like, but she thought about what happened if he discovered the real her and what a thrill it would be. And that was why, despite of being bored to death, she kept their relationship because she wanted to see his reactions with the unusual expression she knew he would give her. However, on the day she went to his house, she did a creative work with Shuichiro. Ray thought that it meant that she was already a monster, and that was also before the incident happened. She asked Ray whether he was jealous, as despite of his being dull, he was cute, and she would make him a prisoner like a Shuichiro, but unfortunately he and Junya saw Shuichiro's work, realizing him what they saw was a woman corpse on a cross. She told him that they choose victims randomly, but it was coincidence that she was from Junya's neighborhood. She thought that it would be all right if she talked to them. When she went to Junya and told him about it, he wanted to see Shuichiro in person. If she told him honestly, all of this was very confusing in the beginning, but she saw an opportunity in it. So if the police arrest and put Shuichiro to death after he finished his art, he would have accomplished his life dream, but that would be a horrible ending. Besides, she had finally experienced the unordinary, and if she wouldn't be careful, she had to return to reality, and she wouldn't let anyone to do that. So, by framing Shuichiro, she could eliminate Junya, who refused to see eye to eye with her. When Junya disagreed with her plans, she turned him into an object for her use. Shuichiro had already agreed that if one of them were caught, he would take his own life. If everything went as planned, he would die for her. Ray asked himself that why he hadn't realized Junya was killed at the same night as well. His several organs were removed, and it was day after Kiyoko had contacted him and told him that there was something wrong about all this. She also told him that she contacted the police, but there was no evidence in Shuichiro's apartment. But how could that possible? Shuichiro's apartment was filled to the brim with his art. So it was all lie, and Kiyoko setting a trap outsmarted the police, and they arrested Shuichiro. Shuichiro also realized that she had betrayed him, but he was going to do the dirty work and die alone. Kiyoko told him that now, as he knew everything, and then holding a blade in her hand, told him that now things were getting back on the track, as he would be Shuichiro's replacement and become her slave who shared the unordinary life with her because he was a good for the role. She then casually mentioned something about killing his brother and becoming a lone star, when he couldn't understand it. She thought to herself that he would still not acknowledge it, so she reminded him that once he was attacked by a killer, so he sacrificed his brother to save himself. Beside, his brother was a good man and well known around here, so his parents were miserable. So it was like the lesser of two brothers got to live or something like that. Ray crushed his teeth. She asked him in an innocent voice that did she open an old wound. However, he didn't need such a superficial and empty way of thinking anymore. So how about becoming her slave and living an unordinary life? As sooner or later she would need someone who has to provide her with materials. She told him to let her teach him a lesson, and then started attacking him while telling him that he would hurt if she didn't miss. Ray screamed with pain. She laughed with satisfaction, telling him that this apartment has great soundproofing, so screaming wouldn't help, then started attacking him on each part of Biff's body. When he couldn't bear it anymore, holding his face in his hands, she asked him that it hurt, didn't I? So whether he wanted her to stop. She wouldn't make it stop until she would make him give in. She would work really hard towards it. Then, kissing him on cheek, told him that it wouldn't be only painful, as she would make him feel good too. Then looking at him, she called him cute and told him that looks were important, as Shuichiro was smart, but he looked like a monster. Ray told him that she was fucking crazy and told her that she found fun in this. Moreover, she tortured people for entertainment, and in enraged voice told her to give Junya back to him. She asked him what he was talking about. She couldn't give Junya back as he was already broken down. Then, holding up a glass in front of him, she told him that she could spare a little bit of Junya's smoothie. He could have a little bit of it. He looked at it miserably. Kiyoko told him to stop looking like that because he was making her wet. Ray, though, that she was a real monster. Seeing a look on his face, she asked him that whether her words moved him and told him that once her current painting was finished, she would paint him. Then, holding a syringe in her hand, she told him that if she used his organs, he would die right away. So for now, he would use his blood. So every day she would draw a little bit blood of his so she would keep him happy. She told him that she would become a blood artist and asked him that, don't he think that his blood would make a great painting? She would draw a vampire, a self-portrait of a beautiful vampire sucking her servant's blood. Then seeing his expressions, she asked him what he was looking at. It seemed that he was looking at this room for the first time. So did taking few blows made him crazy? Then she forced him to look at her, telling him that he was unordinary. Ray told him in a mocking tone that she would never be a monster, no matter how hard she try. She would still be human. Moreover, she was some psychotic woman pretending to be someone else. This really came as a shock to her and inquired about it. He told him that the most real monster among them was closer than she thought, as it was right behind her. As at that moment, Spider-Girl appeared before Kiyoko. Ray told Kiyoko to look behind her. When she did, her expression froze. She stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend where the girl had come from or how she had entered the room. Before Kiyoko could react, the girl moved. Threads shot out in an instant, wrapping around Kyoko's body, binding her tightly and hurling her into the corner like an object. The girl then turned calmly and walked toward Ray. Still tied to the chair, Ray stared at her in shock and asked why she had come to help him. She began to answer, but before finishing her sentence, she climbed onto him. He tried to stop her, but before he could say anything else, her lips pressed against his. She kissed him deeply. From the corner of the room, Kiyoko screamed in fury, cursing the strange girl and calling her a bitch. Struggling against the sticky threads, Kiyoko touched the webbing binding her and frowned. It felt sticky and strong. In a frustrated voice, she demanded that the girl remove it immediately. When that failed, she began shouting again, threatening her, asking who she thought she was. She accused Ray of cheating on her and demanded to know where the hell this girl had come from. Ignoring Kiyoko entirely, Ray pleaded with the girl to untie the ropes around his body. They had to leave immediately, but before he could finish, Kiyoko cut him off, shouting in disbelief. She asked what nonsense he was talking about. Did he really mean to say he would rather be with that slut than with her? He had to be joking. Ray tried again, telling the girl to stop as she began licking his face. This was not the time for this, but she seemed uninterested in listening, moving instead to his neck. His voice shook as he told her they needed to hurry. If this continued, things would only become worse. He begged her to cut the ropes, promising he would do anything she wanted. In a single fluid motion, she sliced through them. Freed at last, Ray staggered up and told her they needed to call the police immediately. But instead of moving away, she pulled him back toward her. Confused and disoriented, he asked what she was doing. This wasn't the time for that. The girl answered only with an ironic smirk directed at Kiyoko before kissing him again. Kiyoko snapped. She screamed in rage, hurling threats, swearing she would kill the girl, her voice echoing through the apartment. Ray shouted that she had lost her mind. What right did she have to be angry when she had never even treated him as her boyfriend? Yet even as he thought this, he realized something unsettling. The girl kissing him didn't seem to care about him either. It felt as though she had freed him only to satisfy herself. He asked her what she had even come here for. Before she could answer, Kiyoko tore herself free from the webbing. With a sudden burst of movement, she shoved the girl aside and lunged at Ray, plunging the blade into his abdomen. Blood spilled instantly. With a twisted smile, Kiyoko whispered for him to die. She wrapped her arms around him and demanded to know who that woman was. Who was she, the one who created those strange threads, who appeared out of nowhere, who licked his blood? No matter how one looked at it, it was unnatural. The pain from the blade burned intensely, like fire spreading through his body. Ray could no longer endure it. His legs gave way and he collapsed, but before he hit the floor, the girl caught him and gently lowered his head onto her lap. Kiyoko trembled with rage at being ignored yet again. Her voice cracked as she declared that she no longer needed Ray. If he wanted to live in a world where it was only the two of them, then she would kill them both. She ordered them to remove their clothes, claiming she would turn their corpses into a sculpture, two lovers flirting together in a park. Ray weakly told the girl that if things continued like this, she should at least escape. She ignored him and instead pressed her mouth to his wound, beginning to suck his blood. Kiyoko stared in shock, demanding to know what she was doing. She muttered that she should have known. This girl was no ordinary human. Ray, dizzy and fading, also asked her what she was trying to do. His vision blurred, and he struggled to keep his eyes open. Then a strange sound filled the room. Kiyoko laughed nervously, calling everything a lie until she noticed them. Spiders. Dozens, then hundreds, crawling across the walls, the floor, surrounding her from every direction. Panic seized her as she realized she was trapped. With a flick of her hand, the girl commanded the spiders to finish Kiyoko. Understanding too late that the situation had changed, Kiyoko fell to her knees and began apologizing, begging for forgiveness, claiming she never meant to hurt Rei. The girl showed no reaction. The next moment, Kyoko's screams filled the apartment as the spiders swarmed over her body, devouring her alive. Rei felt the pain intensify and wondered if this was truly the end. The girl gently stroked his hair. He thanked her weakly for coming to save him, then apologized for having hit her before. He was relieved that it hadn't left a bruise. He thought that if she hadn't kissed him and had instead taken him away immediately, he might not be dying now. But even as that thought crossed his mind, he felt strangely content. In her presence, even at the end, he felt trapped, yet safe. His vision went dark. When he opened his eyes again, he was somewhere else. The place felt familiar. Slowly, he realized where he was. It was a cocoon, soaked in blood. The girl sat above him, eating from it. He remembered seeing her do this once before in his bedroom. He tried to stop her as she leaned closer. Whatever she was consuming tasted like iron. When he asked what it was, she smiled and told him it was human blood before kissing him. Ray wondered if this was a dream. Pain pulsed through the place where he had been stabbed, reminding him that Kiyoko had truly stabbed him. How then was he still alive? At that moment, a man appeared nearby and shouted, demanding to know what the hell they were doing. Ray turned toward the sound and told the girl that someone was there. When Ray finally regained consciousness, he was still tangled in dreams of the spider girl. As his eyes fluttered open, the first thing he saw was his uncle's face looming above him. With a crooked smile and a deliberately light tone, his uncle said that he was sorry Ray had woken up to see him instead of a group of beautiful angels. Ray slowly pushed himself upright and immediately winced. A sharp pain pulsed through his head, grounding him in reality. Whatever had happened, it hadn't been a dream after all. His uncle seemed relieved. He told Ray it was good to see him awake and full of energy, though Ray noticed how carefully the man was watching him. Only then did Ray realize where he was. The beeping machines, the stiff bed beneath him, he was in a hospital. The strangest part wasn't that he was injured. It was that he was alive. His uncle explained that Ray had only sustained minor injuries and bruises. He joked that if Ray somehow died from them, he'd sue the hospital himself. Ray almost laughed until the memory of the stabbing surfaced again. Minor, he thought bitterly. His uncle went on to explain that a homeless man had found Ray in Takanosu Park, deep in a wooded area soaked in blood, and had brought him to the hospital. Ray froze. Takanosu Park was an entire town away from Kyoko's apartment. That meant the monster had carried him all that way. When Ray hesitantly began to speak about the perpetrator behind the murders, his uncle's expression darkened. He told Ray that Kiyoko Yoshimuro had been identified as the culprit, but she was missing. Todo had been apprehended, but he'd taken his own life before a full interrogation. During the investigation, however, they found hair in his room that didn't belong to him or any known victim. Kyoko's phone had gone unanswered, and she hadn't been seen at college or at home. When they searched her apartment, they found a comb. The hair on it matched perfectly, so there was no denying her involvement. Yet nothing about the case made sense. His uncle admitted that Ray himself had been stabbed during the incident. There was a large amount of blood found in Kyoko's room, far more than should have come from his wound alone. And then there were the corpses of spiders. Dead spiders were scattered throughout the apartment. As if mutilating human organs hadn't been enough, the woman had apparently abducted people too. But why kill the spiders? Ray's thoughts spiraled, but before he could reach any conclusion, his uncle continued. They had found traces of other victims on Kyoko's paintings. Blood, DNA evidence layered beneath the art itself. However, each discovery only deepened the mystery. Then his uncle asked if Ray remembered the case of Yuko Maibara, the female student whose organs, including her brain, had been completely removed. Todo had confessed to every crime except that one. Every other victim's body had been recovered, however, Yuko's never was found. Even more troubling, her DNA was nowhere on Kyoko's paintings, meaning Kiyoko hadn't killed her either. The case remained open, tangled with the others by timing alone. To make matters worse, one of his uncle's closest friends from forensics had also disappeared. He admitted quietly that he felt helpless. Then came the harder questions. His uncle asked whether Ray had been using drugs. The circumstances under which he'd been found were disturbing. The doctor had said it looked as though Ray had been drinking his own blood. Was he even sane? Ray felt sick. From the outside, he must have looked like something grotesque, terrifying even. He apologized and said he couldn't remember anything after being stabbed. His uncle placed a hand on his shoulder. He said he only asked because he was a detective. Then, firmly, he told Ray to stay out of the case for his own safety. He advised him to rest and left soon after. Ray was alone, or so he thought. He noticed her at the window. The spider girl stood there, unusually quiet. Hospitals were crowded, noisy, the places she usually avoided. Yet she slipped inside and wrapped her arms around him, pressing a kiss to his lips. There would be no rest today, he thought. Later, he attended Junia's funeral. The weight in his chest felt unbearable. With the ceremony over, Ray thought he now had to return to the dull, unremarkable life he'd had before meeting any of them. But when he reached his apartment, his heart sank. Spiderwebs filled his room. She told him, without words, that she decided to stay. Ray sighed and told her he didn't mind her living with him, but she could at least try to be less messy. Then he noticed something darker woven into the webbing. His blood. It reminded him of a videotape replaying itself every night, except instead of food, there were blood bags. There were no human organs, just stored blood. And now she had brought them into his room, as if she were settling in. He turned on the television. The news replayed the horrifying murder case, emphasizing how the culprits had used real human organs. Ray wondered where Kiyoko was, whether she was alive or already dead. A tap on his shoulder pulled him back. He asked what she wanted. The girl climbed into his lap and hugged him tightly. He told her he couldn't hear the news, but she didn't care. The broadcaster spoke of Akutsu Jr, the last victim. This really grabbed Ray's attention. A student from the same university like culprits was killed simply because of bad luck. The word luck echoed painfully. If Ray had never met Junya, if they'd never gone to the park, if any single moment had gone differently. But he knew Junya wouldn't want him thinking that way. They'd only been together briefly. But for someone as lonely as Ray, it had meant everything. And now those days were gone forever. The spider girl held him as he cried until exhaustion pulled him into sleep. When Ray woke again, it was night. A massive spider stood before his bed. He asked if it was her. He understood then this was her true form. He asked if she planned to eat him. He said he'd always known it would happen someday, that she'd never let him escape. Still, he thanked her. She had let him cry, let him express his emotions. No one else ever had done that before. She leaned close, and despite his fear, something about it felt strangely comforting. He realized she wasn't controlling him anymore because she didn't need to, as he wasn't going to run. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. He told her he didn't know what she was, but she had saved his life. Somehow, she had healed him. He wondered if they would ever truly understand one another. He remembered Junya's words about his loneliness, about how deeply it hurt, and how that pain made him kinder than others. Ray told her that until she grew tired of him, he would stay with her. Then he opened a notebook and asked her to come closer. If they were going to exist together, he would record it, everything. He had been caught at the beginning of summer. Summer was over now. He had been claimed by a monster, and understanding would come way far in the future. He then wrote a title on the first page. Sign, Monster Without a Name.
Hey guys, sorry for mid-editing, but I noticed a lot of you are watching my videos without subscribing. Our subscribe ratio is literally close to 0. I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Thanks. Now, back to the recap.
Yuko Maibara began to narrate how she had become what she was today. By the time she realized it, it was already too late. She had been offered as a sacrifice in the lair of a monster, trapped by the false laws of luxury and status, where everything she had was slowly taken from her. Her existence felt incomplete, half-finished. She was neither exceptional nor worthless. Her athletic and academic abilities were average. She was shy, though not incapable of communication. She was simply mediocre. Yuko Maibara. She lived in a wealthy household, obsessed with titles, reputation, and the world's shallow gaze. It wasn't that she failed outright. She simply never excelled. Even when she won the English speech contest, her father did not praise her. Instead, he dismissed it, saying that anyone, even an ordinary person, could achieve such a thing. No matter how hard she tried, it was never enough. At first, enduring it again and again was easy, but eventually, exhaustion settled deep within her. Still, as long as she remained the daughter of that house, she could live a reasonably ordinary life. But she was done. There was nothing she could be proud of. After giving up everything, each day became meaningless and colorless until she met him. He had the same resigned eyes as hers, alone in a reckless world. He shook her to the core. She was a college student with no friends. She often saw him drinking coffee, noticing how genuinely happy he looked, when he held the cup in his hands. They lived in the same apartment building. Sometimes she followed him, though she knew it made her seem like a stalker. The truth was simpler. She just wanted to talk to him. She wondered if she should write him a letter. Maybe they could accidentally bump into each other on the train platform. She hoped he wouldn't hate her for it, but then she saw him with another woman. She went home that day, her heart heavy. Soon after, a man arrived to visit her father. Her father addressed him respectfully as Professor Kusunoki, apologizing for the delay before escorting him inside. When the man looked at her, there was something unmistakably sinister in his gaze. Yuko retreated to her room and cried. She felt utterly broken. If she couldn't even bring herself to speak to him, how could she survive? Her thoughts returned to the girl she had seen earlier, the one whom he could hold her, caress her, kiss her softly on the mouth. The frustration consumed her. Nothing else mattered. She didn't want anyone to take him away from her. She touched her tongue, imagining what it would feel like to kiss him. All she could feel was emptiness. She wished she could meet him in her dreams. Then she felt it. Someone was watching her. A dark presence lingered, like unseen eyes pressing into her back. That moment became the trigger for her downfall. She then began to dream. In her dreams, a giant spider large as a calf appeared before her. From that night onward, the dreams came every day. Whenever they did, her body froze, completely immobile. On the fourth day, the spider began moving around the room, observing her. On the seventh day, she realized it had been watching her sleep all along. She wondered what it meant. She wondered if she had always been this small. From then on, her dreams never stopped, until finally another dream came. Before she could understand where she was, she heard a voice. She couldn't believe it. It was his voice. She was happy to see him, even if it was only in a dream. She knew it was wrong. She didn't want it to happen like this, but her body refused to move. She told herself it was just a dream, just a nightmare. Spider webs covered everything. She left her room in the dream, unsure of what to do. No one would believe her. She thought of him again and convinced herself that everything would be all right. Then she saw the spider standing before her. In that moment, she desperately wished it were only a dream. Her life had been without color for so long, she never wanted it to end like this. As the spider attacked her, the only thing that filled her mind was his face. She wanted to talk to him just once. She wanted to touch him. She wanted him to touch her, but it was impossible. He had never noticed her. She couldn't believe that she had become the prey of a monster. No, she didn't think of it that way. She only believed that she could not be taken away by anyone else. She played with a monster, and the monster devoured her. That was all it took. The story was simple. Kiyoko, before losing her conscience, starting to lose the comprehension of her surroundings. Looking around, she couldn't understand where she was. She had been meant to become something extraordinary, something creative. She remembered her life, the excitement, the pleasure, the sense that everything was within reach. Then she remembered how she was supposed to spend her life on Todo, and how afterwards she would ultimately become an outcast. She lifted her gaze, confusion tightening her chest. Why am I here? It felt like she was in a... She couldn't finish the thought. Whatever this place was, she hated it. She refused to end here. What had she done to deserve this? Her memories surged back violently. Ray, that girl. The way the girl kissed him so openly, as if she were deliberately humiliating her. Kiyoko remembered herself begging him not to ignore her, but the girl only continued, making a spectacle of it in front of her. Then she remembered coughing the blood, the spiders crawling over her, the suffocating terror. She had truly believed she was going to die. I can't die like this? The thought was unacceptable. She remembered all three of them, remembered the taste of blood filling her mouth as she coughed, blood spilling from her lips. Then came the spiders crawling and suffocating. In that moment, death felt close enough to touch, clinging to her skin like a curse. No, she could not die like this. The thought itself was unbearable. Someone was trying to take everything from her, her body, her future, her right to exist. And then she remembered him, her boyfriend, that girl and the way she kissed him. If death was inevitable, then she would make sure to kill her first, she thought. She would bring her down before the end, slam her into the ground, hear bone give way beneath the force, feel ribs crack under impact. She imagined tearing everything out, leaving nothing behind. After forcing herself past the revulsion, after swallowing what remained of Reina Toshaka, she would empty her completely, casting the remnants aside without mercy. And if it was already too late, if the deed had already occurred, then she would take what remained of her womb, crush it beneath her feet, and throw it to the stray dogs. Those organs, the ones that had dared to love him, would be destroyed. As for the part of her that could not, perhaps she would let it live. Perhaps she would nurture the fruit of that love instead. This would be quite a disgrace. She would tell him that the size of the vessel mattered. She would even forgive Rai for having once been weak, pathetic, she thought, but forgivable. She would give him a gift, something unforgettable. She would take the intestines from that man and fashion them into a scarf, something truly one of a kind. Warm enough, she was sure, to wrap around him when he finally crawled out of that bag. And whatever remained, why not grind it down, smear it across the floor, and paint a spider from it? Calling out to Ray, she was certain of one thing. He would be pleased. Then pain exploded through her body. She screamed, her voice tearing through the air as the memory of the spider's bites burned through her nerves. Her whole body trembled. She was convinced that she had done this to her. The monster, the girl, the enemy. She would never forgive her. That was the last clear thought in her mind. Then someone in a white coat approached and muttered, "There might be a possibility that—" Kiyoko finally opened her eyes. Seeing the intravenous line attached to her arm, she slowly realized where she was. Before she could fully gather her thoughts, a voice reached her ears. "Oh, sleeping beauty, you're finally awake." She turned her head toward the bedside and saw an old man sitting there, his lab coat stained with blood. Uneasy, she asked who he was. He replied that it didn't matter. That answer only deepened her suspicion, and she told him plainly that the situation felt fishy. The man calmly said he was a doctor, and that his patient had brought her here. Just then, there was a knock at the door and someone entered the room. The doctor informed the newcomer that Kiyoko was awake. The girl expressed relief upon hearing this. The doctor asked Kiyoko how her legs felt. She replied that they were numb, but she believed it was only temporary. The doctor said that in all his years of practice, he had never encountered symptoms like hers. He asked if she would allow him to examine her legs. She refused, saying this was a special case and that she needed to handle it herself. She then apologized for her unnecessary curiosity. The doctor told her he wouldn't interfere further as long as he was paid. The hospital room and the wheelchair, he added, were hers to use as she saw fit. The girl thanked him. The girl in the wheelchair greeted Kiyoko and said it was nice to meet her, adding that she had been worried about what she would do if Kiyoko hadn't woken up. Kiyoko couldn't understand what this girl was really about. She mentioned that the doctor had said the girl was the one who brought her here. In a mysterious tone, the girl replied that, in the end, it was indeed her. Kiyoko said that regardless of the reason or purpose, she wanted to thank her. The girl responded that hearing those words sent chills down her spine. Kiyoko found her reaction unnatural. She bluntly told the girl that she was trespassing in someone else's room. Moreover, she had brought her to a shady ward run by a self-proclaimed black market doctor. It felt more like kidnapping. And how did she even know her name? The girl admitted that she couldn't deny the first two accusations. Then she handed Kiyoko her phone. Kiyoko discovered that she had been unconscious for 6 days. The girl told her she had been all over the news. She added that she had been nervous at first. Even though Kiyoko had survived the monster on her own, the injuries she sustained were far more severe than she initially thought. Kiyoko asked if she had witnessed everything. The girl replied that unfortunately by the time she arrived and pieced together a few clues, it was already over. She believed Kiyoko wouldn't make it out alive. Kiyoko said she didn't know whether that thing truly qualified as a monster, but something like that wouldn't break her spirit. The girl then asked how the monster had entered her room and what kind of monster it was. Kiyoko ignored the question and instead asked what the girl wanted. The girl told her not to dodge the question. Kiyoko replied that she hadn't meant for any of this to happen, but people now believed she was a serial killer. If the girl knew everything, why hadn't she turned her over to the police? The girl answered that she couldn't hand her to the police. When Kiyoko demanded an explanation, the girl reminded her that Kiyoko had seen the monster. She then asked whether Kiyoko had seen a schoolgirl in a black sailor suit. The surprise on Kyoko's face confirmed it, making the girl realize she had struck the truth. The girl said she also wanted more information, how Kiyoko had encountered the monster, and who the person was that she kept babbling about. Kiyoko realized she was talking about Ray. Just thinking about him made her blood boil. The girl commented that it seemed Kyoko's luck had also run out. She thanked her for sharing everything and admitted that she now knew more than she ever had before. Because of that, she said, she wouldn't be able to hand Kiyoko over to the police. Kiyoko asked what she intended to do instead. Silence her? The girl replied that she wouldn't waste her time on that. Instead, she needed a favor. Would Kiyoko be willing to help her? Seeing Kyoko's confusion, the girl explained that her goal was to rid the world of that monster. The only survivors who knew about it were Kiyoko herself and Rei-kun. If Kiyoko joined her, it would make killing the monster easier. She asked Kiyoko what she thought. Kiyoko wasn't sure she could trust this woman, but her hatred for the monster was genuine. After everything that had already happened, there was no turning back. She thought about Ray and the girl he had left her for, how they had abandoned her. She also thought about her unfinished art, which would be a disgrace to leave incomplete. Finally, she asked whether they could truly defeat the monster. The girl replied that although some things were secret, Kyoko's response made her willing to explain what needed to be done. Kyoko agreed, but suddenly grabbed the girl by the neck and told her that she would be the one to kill the monster. Reikun was her prey as well, and if the girl interfered, she would become just another one of her creations. The girl calmly replied that she would leave them to her. Kyoko's hatred and her information, she said, would be enough to defeat the monster. She then introduced herself. Her name was Shiori Karasawa, a former graduate of Washio University. She asked Kyoko to tell her more about herself, without forgetting to mention her being a serial killer. The word serial killer enraged Kiyoko. She told Shiori to refrain from using it. She said she was a blood artist, an expressionist who painted life and the dark side of life. Imagining Reikun with the other girl, she whispered that she would let them enjoy themselves while they could. She was already thrilled by what she was about to do next. Ray thought about how summer vacation was coming to an end, and how he had already lost two irreplaceable people. Somehow, in the midst of all that, he had ended up growing warm to a monster. Now, as he stood under the shower, someone suddenly tried to barge in. Startled, he attempted to stop her. It was the monster. He asked her to please listen to him for a second, all the while thinking that his chastity was in serious danger. Even though he wanted to learn more about monsters, and he decided to compromise for a while. Still, he really did not want to take a bath with her. Noticing the strange expression on her face, he asked whether she knew what people said about having good manners in relationships. Then he asked her how long she planned on wearing that uniform. She giggled, stepped into the bathroom, and began taking off her clothes. He tried to stop her, but soon she was down to her underclothes. Then she started tearing those off as well. Ray thought that if he kicked her out, she would only come back again. Instead, he picked her up, placed her into the bathtub, and told her to have it her way. He told himself to stay calm, thinking that he hadn't taken a bath since the monster had come to his house. Besides, she didn't seem to get dirty at all. Could it be that her biology worked differently from that of humans? He began scrubbing his body, but to his shock, she suddenly hugged him from behind. He tried to push her away, but she kept coming at him. He continuously protested about losing his chastity until she hurled him into the bathtub. Only then did he realize that she simply wanted to take a bath with him. In that moment, she was just an ordinary girl. She began splashing water at him, and it reminded him of a certain person who was always on his mind. She moved closer and started kissing him. He wondered what kind of devil had possessed her. At the same time, he thought about how he had been suppressing his feelings for so long. Could this be the moment when he released them all at once? Before he even realized what was happening, he found himself wrapping his arms around the monster.
Please!
Subscribe.
I need this! My mom is kind of homeless.